Hello, you hottie hot hotties, and welcome back to Wild&T. Today, we're going to be going into part two of our special episode where we dive into Tony's favorite topic, astrology. And with that, Tony, take it away. So, one thing that I would like to start with is I kind of like a little while ago kind of like put together this concept of astrology and like how it works. So I have a couple of different concepts. Like I could literally draw you up a formula and be like, so there are many different components to astrology. You have your planets, you have your signs, you have what are called the houses. And if you like, it's basically like A times B times C equals, X. And it's so if you take the sign and you take the planet and you take the house and you add them all together, you get this. So from a mathematical standpoint, that's one way of
Basic
looking
math.
at it. And there are other components that you can add into that. Like there's like,
The
you know,
imaginary eye.
exactly. There are like and negatives and alphas and exponents and like stuff like that that you can add to it. Like, and there are so many little things that go into astrology. Astrology also is very in a lot of ways it's evolving. There are things called like derivative astrology where you can take somebody's birth chart and you can do things where instead of just like looking at the snapshot of their birth chart from when they were born, you can do like a persona chart, which is where you take the sun and you make that the main component and then you rearrange the chart around the sun
Oh,
basically.
wow. I didn't realize that was a thing.
And like there are so many different components. One of the things that I find really interesting is this theory of where you can find your children or your future children in significant placements in their chart based on what's in your chart.
The control.
And I'm like, I think that would be something really fun to just go and look at mom and dad's charts and be like, all right, what planets are there? Um what signs are there in those charts that like might be reflected? So like dad, for example, the chart of the position of the first daughter in the chart is in the second house. And dad has a Mars in his second house, and
That's
Tara
me.
is in Aries, which is ruled by Mars.
That's me.
It's also in Leo, and Tara's rising sign is in Leo.
Me
So
too.
you can find little interesting things like that too in
Wow.
astrology. But
So it
wow.
literally says like first, like how do you know it's first daughter?
I don't know how they calculate it. I only know the chart. I can look at it and see that. So it's like the second through the seventh house are daughters, and the eighth through the first house are sons.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So like me as the second daughter, oh, that's crazy. Ooh. Dad has a Pluto in his third house, which is the house of the second daughter, and I'm a Scorpio, which is ruled by Pluto.
Okay.
So like, and you could look at moms and dads and see, and it can be based on significant planets. It can be based off of the signs, significant sign placements, and you'll find different stuff like that in the charts. One of the other things I want to cover, like when it comes to astrology from like a more spiritual standpoint, from like a Christian standpoint, because we are Christians. And I've been, like I said, I've been into astrology since I have a child. I've been a devout member of the church my entire life. And I like to think of astrology as this. So if you think about how God created everything, right? So he created all of the planets, he created all of us, and everything that he creates has an intelligence of one type or another. It has a spirit. So each of the planets, if you think of each of the planets of having their own spirit, of having their own intelligence, of whatever level that might be, that spirit, that intelligence is just an expression of is an individual expression of divine energy. So all of us, we all have a spirit. So we all have our own individual expression of divine energy. Now, if you take all of the planets in the sky at the exact moment you were born, so from the sun, the moon, Mercury through Pluto, you take all of those planets, you make a snapshot of them, you have all of those individual divine energies being expressed at the exact moment that you were born.
Whoa.
And that is your individual expression of divine energy captured in that moment.
So essentially, the moment you're born, your personality and energy is affected by where the planets are in the sky.
Exactly. So it
And the
starts
energy that they're giving off.
exactly. So all of that energy is being channeled into your spirit and becomes your divine expression of energy.
We are but stardust. I feel like you could do a TED talk on this for sure.
Oh, I could. I could.
Tony's like a PhD dissertation that lasted 2 weeks at least.
Oh, I could.
You're like, and we would time it to be at the exact perfect time of planets and alignments and all that.
There you go. There's your dissertation. Why I think astrology is a science.
It's not why I think it's a science.
Teddy, don't be offensive.
Yeah, it is a science.
How I can prove that astrology is a science. How about that?
Because I think people forget also that astrology has been used and studied for thousands of years. This is something that way back people have been using.
I was just going to say, I appreciate that they've kept Pluto as a planet in astrology, even though science doesn't recognize it as a planet anymore.
The planet in
Or
my
Pluto.
heart.
And there's my second dissertation on why Pluto is a planet and always will be.
Insert Gus saying, "You heard about Pluto, right?"
You heard about Pluto? It's messed up, right?
That's messed up.
I mean, it's part of Tony's second daughter in dad's chart, so it has to.
Exactly. Pluto is a huge component of my life because Scorpios are ruled by Pluto.
And the other planets are like, "You can't sit with us."
Pretty much.
Typical.
Interesting stuff. I don't understand most of it, but it sounds really cool.
I was just looking at the designs on everybody's charts, and I think Mom and Teddy have the most interesting designs.
Thank
Just-
you.
I just think they're cool.
It's just geometric.
That's
And
actually
Sarah and
another-
Dad are similar, and Tony's and mine are similar.
Oh, how funny.
Yeah.
Another interesting component of astrology. Like you can tell things about a person, about their life. Oh my gosh. I just looked at Mom's. I think Mom has a grand cross.
What is that?
They're
Is she
all
destined for
crossing at
greatness?
the same time.
You can tell things about people's lives based on like the pattern of their chart even. It's the way that she has like two big groups of planets across from each other and then like some crossing through, a couple crossing through the opposite way.
Wow.
Dallas probably has like the golden ratio in his design or something.
Dallas was literally born when the planets aligned ever so nicely. And a new planet crossed in its path that no one has deciphered yet.
And Dallas, by the way, is a Sagittarius, born in the year of the dragon. He literally has the two luckiest signs that you can get. All right, so we'll start with Tara. Tara, you're big six. You have a Leo rising, an Aries sun, moon, and Mercury.
Reliability.
You also have the Venus Aquarius and Mars Aquarius. So you have what's called a stellium, first of all. You have three planets in the same sign or the same house is a stellium.
Sounds
So
cool.
I always like to say that if you have the sun, this is just a me thing. This isn't necessarily a agreed upon astrologer thing. But like for me, I'm always like, if you have the sun and the moon in the same planet, then you are like or the same sign, then you are the like a true expression of that sign. Because you're coming at it not only from an outward personality ego standpoint, but you're coming at it from like an inward emotional standpoint as well.
Grounded
Which is
in
why Tara
Aries.
is red.
Yeah, grounded in Aries, red through and through, Mars.
But it's funny too because you have your rising, which makes up your first house. So your rising sign determines the rest of your birth chart. And it's important to know like your birth time, your exact birth time, because that determines your rising sign. The rising sign switches every 3 hours approximately. So your birth chart is going to be determined by your rising sign. So you have your rising, your first house, your rising sign is actually opposite where your Venus and Aquarius are. Or, yeah, your Venus and Mars and Aquarius. So that's your seventh house on the opposite side. And your seventh house is all about like partners and long term relationships. So you've got a lot of energy that goes into like your relationships and how you create relationships, how you maintain relationships, which I find personally very interesting because like you're one of those people who's always been big on like maintaining family relationships. Like that's something that you talk about a lot and that you put like a lot of energy and passion into, which is your Mars.
Don't go against the family.
Fast and Furious, Terra version.
Mi familia.
You also, so your stellium, your Aries stellium, is in your ninth house, which is your house of your belief systems and about higher learning and culture and foreign travel. So you've got like a lot of that very like hardcore energy, Aries energy going into your belief systems.
Hmm.
And so you have your sun, which again is your outward personality. You have your moon, which is your emotions, and you have your Mercury, which is your communication and self-expression. Like all very concentrated in like this area of higher learning and belief systems and like cultural understanding.
So not only is my RBF genetic, but it's also given from the universe.
Given from the universe.
A gift from the gods.
A gift from the gods.
God's gift.
You will be able to intimidate without saying a word.
So touching back on that Aquarius, the Mars and Venus in Aquarius. Fun thing about people with an Aquarius in Venus is that they tend to be the most difficult when it comes to relationships. When it comes to
gift to relationship.
relationships. It's not because you're difficult, it's because you are picky. Not
Oh, I know.
picky, but
Oh, I
you
know.
want
I'm not the
somebody
difficult
you
one.
want somebody very unique and different and not like other girls.
I'm not like other girls.
You are not like other girls.
You're not like other girls. You don't say. Also, I am. Just like every other girl. Not a compliment.
So, a couple more points. You have your Jupiter. So, Jupiter in Cancer in your 11th house. Jupiter is where like our sign of fortune and luck, where things kind of come like more easily to us, or like things that we're naturally like attract and gravitate towards. So, you have like, again, like Cancer tends to be like the mother, and then the 11th house is like our social connections, our friendships, our like social network. It's like a very like touching again like on that energy that you put into your relationships. It's like that ease of like being able to make connections. And then you have a Saturn in Capricorn in the 6th house. So Capricorn or Saturn is our disciplinarian planet. It can cause us a lot of delays and like it's a place where you have to have a lot of discipline and you have to have like a lot of You have to learn a lesson in order to like get past certain obstacles. So you have it in your sixth house, which is the house of daily routines and also of like our work routines. And you have it in Capricorn, which is like the big authoritative boss like sign. So it's like you do tend to come off as like this very authoritative person. And it's like you may struggle sometimes to maintain a daily schedule, but it's also like if you do maintain a daily schedule, then it's something that really helps you a lot in life. So then again, when we really get into astrology, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Like this is just like an overview of like a few things that go into your life and like affect your guys' lives because there's like so much more. There's how the different planets interact with each other. There's like more about the ascendant and like other planets. I'm not even touching on like all planets. There are like fate points, which are like they're called the nodes and they're kind of like things that like you're destined or towards or things that you really like move towards in your life. But this is just like a little snapshot of like how some things work in your life. And I'm trying to keep it as like scaled down as I can right now. But like, I don't know. We've talked about astrology a lot. How do you feel like you relate to like being an Aries and like throughout your life, I guess?
It's always made sense to me for sure. Like I think like the Mars thing ever like before I even knew what astrology was, like Mars was always my favorite planet and heat is like a big thing for me and red is always a color that I've always liked and been drawn to. I even remember one time having a fight with mom and my dance teacher over the color dress I was supposed to wear for a performance. And they were like, no, no, you should wear this one. And I was like, I want to wear the red one. And they're like, you can't wear the red one. You have to wear this one. And I was like, then I quit. And that's literally what happened.
Assertion.
That's
The assertiveness.
How old were you at this time?
Like
was
5 or
3.
6, 7. I don't know. I was very young. I was too young to be making
Those
that
were her first words.
but
so
it's always nice to feel like you have an explanation for parts of your life that maybe you didn't have an explanation before and it's not to use it as an excuse, but it's nice to feel like you have an explanation sometimes on why you feel certain things or why you are drawn certain ways. And for the most part, being in Aries and the birth chart that you say, it definitely, it's not like it's not in line whatsoever. It's not like nothing matches. Like I can definitely take similarities or like understand what it's all saying.
and like one more thing that like I just thought of right now. So again, your rising sign is a Leo, and Leos are ruled by the sun, and your sun is in Aries. And so like that's like your what your rising sign is ruled by is also the planet that's called your chart ruler. And so that's going to have like a significant like impact on the rest of your chart and the rest of your personal expression. So like having that sun in Aries, in a stellium, in your house of belief systems, like that is like a big like this is really what matters to me sort of thing.
Yeah. And it's funny because Toni is an Aries also.
Mm.
Her birthday is 7, 8 days after mine. And I always thought it was so cool that we're both Aries, but because of that 8-day difference, like we're different Aries. And it's also cool,
Mhm.
but it's also fun to be like, yeah, watch out for the two Aries. And it's crazy we are because we have that connection and we also have kind of like a look-alike connection as well. It just like makes it so much more fun, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think it's funny how I feel like our personalities are very similar as far as just like who we are as people, not necessarily our emotions or anything like that, but just as people, who we are, I think is very similar. And but yet we are very different Aries, and it is kind of funny too, because I always grown up was your mini me, and I mean, it's just interesting, like, how connected is that if we're both Aries? But it's just
Yeah.
it's just funny.
Yeah.
So going into Tani's chart next, that's actually perfect because I wanted to do a little compare and contrast of the two Aries.
Perfect. Let's compare and contrast our Ariesness.
So Tani, you have a lot more differentiated planets. And like this can make a big difference in like a person's expression and personality too, because when you look at Tara's chart, she's almost all fire and air. So like each sign has an element associated with it. It also has a thing called a modality, which based on like where you fall within the season. But like with like going into just the elements, like that very fire and air, it's very passionate, it's very intellectual, it's very like here and gone again. So it can be like it can manifest in like really like big bursts and big spurts. Whereas Tawny, you have some more water and earth. And water and earth is a little more long lasting and it's a little more like it tends to be a little more grounded and a little more emotional, which is usually what's associated with water. So you have a Libra rising, which is really interesting because Libra is a sign of like it's an air sign, it's a sign of like justice and balance. So you have that kind of in like in opposition to Aries' very passionate for energetic bursts. So you have your sun in Aries, your moon in Pisces, Mercury in Taurus, Venus in Aries, and Mars in Virgo. So this is a lot more methodical, a lot more structured, a lot more stubborn energy. And you have two interesting oppositions here. So you have so Aries and Libra are naturally sister signs, which are the signs that are opposite each other on the birth chart. So you have a lot of this very like much more mixed energy, and you have your ascendant in Libra, which is opposing your sun in Aries.
Is this my split personality again?
Yeah, it's very much like this juxtaposition and a lot of like this need for balance, basically. You also have your Venus nearby in Aries as well. And then you have a seventh house stellium, so you have different signs, two different signs in there, but you have three planets in there. So you have your sun, your Venus, and your Mercury all in the seventh house, which again is your long-term partnerships and how you create and maintain relationships. So there's also a lot of that focus on relationships. And it's interesting because you have the sun in Venus, and the Venus is natural ruler of Libra, which is the natural seventh house. So you have that, and then you also have your Mercury there in Taurus. And Taurus is like a very grounded energy, and it's based a lot more in stability. And so it's like you have this more grounded ability to communicate basically in your relationships. So then you also have your moon in Pisces, which is opposite your Mars in Virgo.
A lot of opposites going on here.
Yeah. Opposites. So your moon is your emotions and being in Pisces, which is a water sign and therefore more naturally emotional. It can tend to be a little bit erratic emotionally. And then it's over here opposite your Virgo, your Mars in Virgo, which is a drive and a passion for structure and organization and having things in place. It's a very perfectionist sign, and it's a very like energy that can lead you to like perfectionism and a need for like a little bit of neuroticism and like a need for things to be in order and be in place or you get overwhelmed.
Yeah. Yes, I do.
So then you have your Jupiter in the fifth house in Aquarius. So that's like a natural like ease and attraction concerning like creative endeavors. Our 5th house is our creative house. In Aquarius, it can be a little bit off the wall, maybe not like necessarily the mainstream thing. And then your Saturn, which is your disciplinarian planet, is also in the 6th house for you, like it is for Tara. So it shows that you can benefit a lot from having a daily routine, but also struggle a lot with it as well.
Yeah.
The 6th house is also a house of our physical health. So for both you and Tara, there's like that having a workout structure and having regular like meal and workout like planning is like good for you. And if you like get off of that, then it can lead to like some more difficult like physical health issues as well.
Wow, who knew the planets could tell us our best diet and workout plan?
Seriously.
Crazy.
Yep, it touches every aspect of your life. You can change everything. So yeah, with Tara, again with like the 2 Aries, with like Tara, there's a lot of this very like energetic burst, a lot of like spotlight energy, a lot of like fiery, passionate energy. And then with Tawny, there's like this very emotional like need for balance and like a little bit more like grounded when it comes to material things, a little bit like more focus on like material organization and security. But like with that little bit of erraticism thrown in with both Aries and Pisces. Like and that constant like back and forth need for balance.
That's why as an Aries, I can burn really, really, really hot in very short periods of time. And I know that I can suddenly go from 0 to 100 so fast and then right back down really quick. Give myself whiplash.
Get to know your emotions. This is anger.
So
Yeah,
speaking of
you're like a faster burner. I get like the burst, but like your burst burns so much faster than mine.
I'm like setting a dandelion on fire. Dead one.
Tawny's bursts do burn a lot faster, but they also are grounded a lot more in the past than Tara's are. Tara moves on from the past a lot faster than Tawny does.
Okay. Wow. I didn't think about that.
Okay.
So
I'm not
Tawny, you
saying
tend to
you're
be more
wrong.
of like reactionary based on like this has been a problem in the past and it's happening again and again and again. And then like Tara's more like this is a problem right now.
Ask my husband about most of the disagreements we get into.
Speaking about like our 0 to 100 and like balance and 2 opposite sides of things, Teddy is our resident Gemini.
Our favorite Gemini.
And Geminis get a bad rap a lot of the times, but I personally have never had an issue with them thanks to my excellent training from my having a sister who's a Gemini.
Yeah, when people are like, "Well, I'm a Scorpio," I'm like, "You don't scare me." I have a sister who's a Scorpio.
I know
I have
you.
slipped into those pits of hell and come.
And guess what? I'm on the other side of that. I'm an Aries. That's how I feel every time.
Another fun thing about Teddy and I is that we have each other's sun and rising sign. So I actually have a Gemini rising and a Scorpio sun, and Teddy has a Scorpio rising and a Gemini sun.
Oh, I did not know that about Teddy. Teddy has a
See it?
little bit of Scorpio in her.
Are we surprised?
Not anymore.
Basically, we both present ourselves to other people with the same energy, but in opposite ways.
Wow.
Yes.
That's
Oh,
aggressive.
yes.
Wow.
My life suddenly makes so much more sense.
Yeah, that was insane.
I feel like that was pretty prominent when you and I were both serving missions and sent our letters home at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
Tony's like, I hate them all. I'm coming home. And Teddy's like, everything's fine. Everything's fine.
Whereas Teddy, I would say, realistically had to deal with a lot more problems than I did.
And I had companions who like hated me for the duration of our companionship. It was bad.
That's insane, honestly.
But
They seem
you
like
know,
the Gemini right there.
Geminis get a bad rap, apparently.
So, yeah, a lot of the reason people hate Geminis is because they're like, well, they have these split personalities and they're like this one day and like that another. But in reality, what Geminis are is they're the chameleons of the zodiac. They're like the performers. They're constantly reading the script and reacting accordingly and acting accordingly. And you are the script that they are reading. So they're going to act according to who you are, not necessarily according to who they are, but that's who they are.
Facts. Facts.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've never felt like I've never felt like Teddy has split personalities. I definitely see like the performative side, but I just thought that was, you know, Teddy's
Flair.
style of wanting to perform is all. And it wasn't,
Hey.
never felt like opposite of who she was. It just felt like her at the same time.
So
I don't know. I saw two
another-
different personalities. I saw Teddy when she was at school around her friends, and then at home with me.
That's true. Teddy did have
That's
multiple
everybody.
personalities depending on who she was around. So
It is true. It is true. But just like how you said, it's because I'm reacting to the script, right? So the script is different in different places. I remember telling mom one time that I just felt like I was a different person at home versus at school versus at like church because I couldn't like, and I've always been that way where when I'm around really, really quiet people, I get really, really loud and just like rambunctious, and I'm the loud person in the group. And when I'm around really loud people, I get really quiet because they want the stage and I let them have it. And I'm just in the background because that's what they need. So like, yeah, I can come across as inconsistent, but it's just it feels so natural. I don't know.
Honestly, nothing surprises me personally when they're like, "Oh, she's different at school." I'm just like, "Yeah, that's her. That's how she is."
and I find that like funny too because again, I have that Gemini rising and like I'm really good at putting on this mask of being a lot friendly of a person than I actually am. And like it doesn't last as long as it does for like a Gemini sun. So like you can play the part and I can only play it like consistently and I can only play it briefly. But I think it's funny because I feel like in a lot of ways you do come off with like that more stoic, like not like sometimes you just come off with like this very like dead stare Scorpio
Yes,
look
like
too.
people think that I'm a really quiet, reserved person. And yeah, no, it is true. As approachable as I can be, I feel like uh people also didn't approach me as much as they would like Toni. Toni got approached all the freaking time.
And I hated it.
And yeah, no, that's interesting actually.
All right. So following that, you have your Gemini Mercury, which is also really interesting because Gemini is ruled by Mercury. So you have your planet of expression and communication in its native house or its native sign. Then you have your Venus in Taurus and a Mars in Virgo. So looking at your chart, looking at your placements is really interesting because you do come off very Gemini like on the offset, right? You have like this very Gemini way of moving through the world, but like in reality, you also have like a lot of this very grounded energy. So like the Cancer is probably, I would say, one of the most grounded of the water signs. And then you have Taurus and Virgo, which are both earth signs, and those are all about like that grounded security, material, like what do I need? Like what do I need and like to feel secure and like very like sensing sort of vibe. So you have your planets all over the place. So when you looked at Tani's and Tara's, they both had these stelliums, and Tani's had all of like these oppositions, whereas yours is just like circles the entire chart.
She's like,
You
It's
can't
so
catch
funny.
me.
Run, run, run as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man.
You're a monster.
So you have that like and it's very much best way to describe it is like a very well-rounded energy. When you have like a lot of placements and a lot of like around the chart of different elements, all that stuff, it gives you a more well-rounded vibe. So like you've got a little bit of everything there. So you have your Sun and your Mercury together, also in the seventh house. It's interesting so far how many seventh house like relationship placements that like y'all have had so far. So having that big focus on like creating and maintaining relationships and having like consistent long-term relationships. And the funny thing about the seventh house too is that it is also a house of our enemies. So like
Okay,
long-term
my
enemies
enemy.
and like nemesises and stuff like that. And I feel like all of you have had some really interesting rocky enemy relationships.
Wait, what was my seventh house again? You said that's one of the enemies?
So you have your Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in the seventh house. In Aries and also in Taurus.
Taurus is my enemy. Is that what you're saying? Shocking.
Could be. So you have your moon in Cancer in the eighth house. That is a house of shared assets. So like shared finances, shared like anything that like you co-own or create with another person. It's also a house of transformation. So it's big on like emotional transformations there. It's sort of like this energy of like being able to easily share things with people and also like emotionally inside yourself going through a lot of like emotional revolutions. So you have your Venus in you have your Venus in your sixth house. So you have a little bit better relationship with physical health, with daily routines, with workspace. It's also in Taurus, which means that that's a big place of like needing security, needing stability, needing certain comforts around you. Then you have your Mars, which is in Virgo, in your 10th house. So your 10th house is your house of career. So there's a lot of emphasis on drive, like in career, in reputation, in public image, and having like a certain, like very manicured, because Virgo likes that organization, and they're like this very manicured, put together um, public image for other people.
Do you like
And I feel like that's a lot of the part of the Gemini too. It's interesting that you have that like in juxtaposition with your Gemini personality because it's like again like that actorness, like needing to put on the costume and like have it presented before people.
being portrayed being perceived a certain way? Yes,
Exactly.
a thing that I struggle with for sure.
So then you have your Jupiter in Saturn in your first house, but it's also near your Pluto. So I was looking at it because I'm over here like, so your first house is your house of appearance, it's your house of self-esteem, and it's like a house of things that come more easily to you. Or with Jupiter being there, it's the planet of things that come more easily to you. But like being near your Pluto, which is your planet of more like dark and like transformative sort of things, it can also show there's a lot of transformation in your like how you present yourself and like your appearance. There's a lot of transformation with your personal view of yourself, with your self-esteem. You have a very transformative chart.
That's pretty cool.
Versatility.
So then last we have your Saturn in the fourth house, which is actually really interesting because it's also in Pisces, and Pisces is our planet of it's a lot of like creativity and like the esoteric spirituality, but like being in the fourth house, which is your house of home and family, and having a Saturn there can show like this almost like disconnect and difficulty establishing a home space.
Oh,
All right. So that's y'all's charts. I'm a Scorpio. I don't know how much I want to go into my chart. But, I have again the Gemini rising. I have I don't know my own chart. Gosh. I have a Gemini rising, Scorpio sun, a Taurus moon, Sagittarius, Venus and Mercury, and a Cancer Mars. I talked again about how I have that Libra and Jupiter. I attract a lot of Libras into my life. And I also have that Jupiter in the fourth house, which is where like my home space is. So like my home space is very important to me. And like I like to keep it. So, I have a Taurus in the moon in Taurus, which is actually opposite Scorpio. So my sun and my moon are opposite each other, and that's actually an interesting placement because where your sun and moon are in comparison to each other in your chart shows what the phase of the moon was when you were born too. So I was actually born under a full moon, basically.
Owl.
Owl.
Which I think is I consider an important part of my personality to be born under a full moon.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that. I mean, full moon has its own meaning.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Got that witchiness in you.
I'm so jealous.
She's a witch.
We have found the witch. May we burn her?
Did a black cat cross mom's path as you're being born also?
Which I just realized too, Tara, because you have sun and moon in the same sign in Aries, that means you were born under a new moon. So you were born at the beginning of things, of the cycle.
Not the beginning.
I am the first daughter of this family.
So then, part of what I find really interesting about my chart too is having that Sagittarius, Venus and Mercury. One of those reasons is because Sagittarius is considered like a very just like blunt and open sign that kind of just like say things. And like I feel like having my planet of communication as well as my planet of like relationships in the sign of bluntness that like I tend to be very like blunt with what I say, and it a lot of times it surprises people and catches people off guard because like they don't expect that of me, and then like I'll say something out my mouth and they'll just be like, "Why would you say that?" And then I'll be like, "Well, why it was true. Why wouldn't I say it?" But yeah. Lastly, my Cancer Mars. And Cancer or Mars is all about our passion and our drive, and it's about our anger a lot of the time. And Cancer Mars tends to be very, very, very angry people, turns out. Like it's not expected at first, but yes, I do hold a lot of anger, and I tell people that my default emotion is anger, and I blame that on my Cancer Mars. So,
There you go.
so yeah, I've always loved astrology. I've always since I found out like I learned about like being a Scorpio is, and like there's some arguments on like calling yourself by your sun sign, which is what we do in like mainstream astrology. When people ask you what your sign is, you give them your sun sign. But a lot of astrologers will talk about how we're actually our rising signs and how we should be more based off of that. But like personally, I feel like a Scorpio is who I am. And like when I learned about that and I learned about astrology, it really like helped me find a foundation in who I am as a person because I always felt like I was I I was interested in things that like other people weren't, and like as a Scorpio, Scorpios tend to be very based like they like to learn about things that are like occult and like taboo and stuff like that. And I always felt so bad because I was like, Well, I've always been, like, more interested in, like, these kind of, like, darker, morbid, maybe, like, offhand things, and, like, when I learned more about myself through astrology, I was like, "Okay, like, I'm not a bad person, I just have a different viewpoint, a different way of moving and
I was
viewing the
just
world."
born under the full moon.
I was just born under the full moon and under the sign of Scorpio. So
That's funny.
so yeah, that's just a little tidbit on why I love astrology. One more thing I wanted to mention is that there's part of, like, the hereditary astrology theories is, having so the moon, your moon sign, the moon is the planet of the mother. And one thing that I find interesting in our family is that our grandma had a moon in Pisces.
Our mom's mom?
Yes, our mom's mom had her moon in Pisces, and our mom's sun sign is a Pisces. And then our mom has her moon sign in Aries, and her first daughter, and our mom was also her mom's first daughter. So her first daughter has her sun sign in Aries.
Whoa.
So
Oh.
So
there's
if
actually
my first daughter would also be in Aries,
your first
essentially.
daughter would also be in Aries. Yep.
Whoa.
That's
If you follow the
crazy.
Tony's
trend.
my first daughter,
Does
so
that mean
that
mine's gonna be a Pisces?
It could be.
Funny.
Interesting.
That's cool. That is interesting.
very interesting.
So yeah, there's our astrology snapshots for you.
Thank you.
And there you have it.
We love talking about this. We can talk about it for days on end. And that was as shortened as we could get it. So
This
And
might
then
be
there's a
a
lot of times where I've been like,
two-parter.
Tony, there's something going on with my life. What's my chart look like?
yep. I'm like, can you read my cards? Can you tell me what's in retrograde right now? What should I prepare for? What house am I in right now?
Exactly. And we didn't even talk about profection years. I want to get into that too some other time.
Nope. It's a good resource to kind of help you realign with yourself if you feel like you need it, which
Yes.
is nice.
It's just fun.
Toni does. It is fun, and Toni really did her study and has good knowledge of it, so she can explain it pretty well, and it's nice to have.
Yep. And I highly enjoy it and I highly encourage it. And Tara calls it my party trick because, like, I have an app where I can pull up anybody's chart at, like, the drop of a hat and tell them all about
Have you met Toni? She can tell you your astrology. I
That's
thought,
cool.
well, crochet was your first party trick, and then now, since you've really gotten into this, I use this as your party trick.
Start crocheting star signs.
Crocheting is a little bit slower, so
I would like my chart, please.
astrology I can do a little bit easier.
Thank you for listening to Wild&T. This podcast episode was produced and edited by Teddy Chanpoon, Kyron Maciel, and Dallas Hanson. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with your sisters. For more content, you can follow Wild&T on all platforms or our individual socials. See you next week.